Hi, this is Dr. Michelle Robin with Small Changes, Big Shifts, Building Rhythm and Resilience. And I believe if you'll change one thing a month, one thing for the next 12 months, you'll change your life forever. Thanks for joining me on the journey. Welcome back to Small Changes, Big Shifts. Hey, it's fall. Fall's starting to show up. Not officially fall, but it's going to show up here for a little bit in Kansas City, probably in other places around the country as well, from wherever you're joining us from. On this show, we like to celebrate, guide, connect, which provide hope. I also believe that those words help you build rhythm and resilience. Well, today's guest, I've been kind of stalking her the last few months, and she's a native of Raleigh, North Carolina. Joni and her indisputable Southern accent arrived in Kansas City almost 10 years ago after leading initiatives within state and federal government, as well as advocacy organizations. In her 8 years with the mayor's office with our own Sly James, the majority of them spent as chief of staff, Joni has proven herself as an accomplished political strategist, communications expert, and organizational leader. Prior to her time at City Hall, Joni worked with the American Federation of Teachers, the Missouri Department of Transportation, and the Office of Missouri Secretary of State, Robin Carnahan. She's also the author of the new book, The Thin Line Between Cupcake and Bitch. Yes, you heard me say that live. Taking action, driving change, and getting results. Joni has authored a LinkedIn series addressing the unique workplace challenges women face surrounding conflict. Joni, welcome to Small Changes, Big Shifts.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting to be here today.
Well, what compelled you to write this book, The Thin Line Between Cupcake and Bitch, Taking Action, Driving Change, and Getting Results?
Well, certainly it was my lived experience being in politics and government for 22 years. It's hard to believe that I'm old enough to have done anything for 22 years. So it's my lived experience. It's the lived experience of a lot of women that I know and work with and observe. There was one particular moment where I thought this is the universe trying to tell me something. You all may have heard a little bit about the Convention Center Hotel that's built downtown in Kansas City, Missouri. And I was leaving one meeting to try and get that conversation jump-started again. And two of the gentlemen involved in the meeting, of course, I was the only woman in the conversation. And two of the men asked if I could talk to them for a few minutes after the meeting. And I said, yes, of course. And one of them wanted to tell me that he thought I was way too bitchy and that I had alienated the room. And the other gentleman wanted to tell me that he thought that I was way too nice and I got bulldozed by everybody else in the room. And I thought, well, both of these things can't be true. And maybe there's something more to this than just this single meeting today. So with that, I decided that when I had more time on my hands, I was going to write a book.
Speaking of having more time on your hands, and you talked about 22 years, we were chatting before we went live here about August 1st, 2019 being a big date in your life. So share a little bit about that date and kind of what you miss about the 8 years prior to that in local government, and then what you don't miss.
Yeah, I got to say that I miss the people. And a lot of folks have moved on to different opportunities now, so they wouldn't even be there anyway if I still was there. But other than the people and the relationships that I created and had, when you go through 8 years of something that intense of being in the mayor's office, you really form a bond with people. So there's certainly people that I miss seeing and talking to every day. I don't miss the pace. I don't miss the constant, incessant drama. I don't miss the politics. Life is good these days. I'm happy to be where I am, that's for sure.
Well, Chris Hernandez is a longtime friend of mine. I'm sure you know that name.
Oh, I just love him.
What a great soul. So, hey, Chris, we're talking about you, sending you some love out today. Yeah. Chris and I met actually in my first 2 years of practice. He was doing a story about something I was involved with hurricane relief. And so he came out and we became fast friends. You become fast friends with Chris pretty darn easy. He's got this big personality. I'm fascinated because I've spent this much time in politics, almost zero. And so what do you think about, and I don't want to be a political show today, but what would you want the average person to know about politics that you've had the privilege of seeing on the other side?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of people out there who don't feel like politics and political decisions impact them. And that just really couldn't be further from the truth. Whether you're looking at healthcare or climate change, there's just so many issues where decisions are made almost on a daily basis that impact our daily lives, and we oftentimes don't even realize what that is. So I hope everyone gets registered to vote and actually turns out to vote.
Yes, and now's the time. We're less than, 2 months away, probably not exact days, but probably 50-ish days or so. So tell me something about yourself that most people don't know.
Okay, this is interesting. I think I'm probably one of the few people in the world that can say they've been kissed on the cheek by both Vladimir Putin and Barack Obama.
Wow, tell us about that. Dive into that.
Yes. So I lived in Russia for a while when I was an undergrad, and very randomly, I found myself in Moscow one Saturday afternoon, and I was just walking into a museum, and all of a sudden, all these very long, expensive-looking limos pulled up right where I was in front of the museum, and you could tell like some big shindig, Russian style, was about to go down. And somehow I stumbled upon a big political rally, and it was Vladimir Putin. And he gets out of his car, and he's just like shaking hands and kissing people, clearly pre-COVID when you could do that. And I just happened to be standing right there, and he, gave me a pat on the back and kissed me on the cheek, along with who knows how many other thousands of people. And then very similar experience, I got to see Barack Obama in Forest Park many, many years ago when he was campaigning for Claire McCaskill.
Wow. I want to go back to your book, and where's the best place for people to buy your book?
You can find it on our website, wickhamjames.com, and you can see both the Barnes & Noble link and the Amazon link. And also, if you're out and about going into bookstores these days, it's in Barnes & Noble stores.
Well, I probably our friends Rainy Day do this. Does Vivian Jennings have it? We need to get her to have. Rainy Day has it?
Yeah.
Yeah, our local favorite bookstore here in Kansas City, Rainy Day Books. So talk a little bit about this thin line, and what are some of the tools you have in there to help not just women, but men navigate the difference between those two, or that thin line?
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to accomplish by writing this book, I wasn't interested in writing a book that was all about hating on men. It's just not my style. I don't think it's necessarily constructive. So I wanted to write a book about communication and leadership to get us thinking about the different ways men and women communicate and lead, and to think about how we can use our different styles more constructively and more effectively. So when it comes to widening that thin line between cupcake and bitch, I really encourage men to think about how they can use their voice to elevate the women leaders around them, because it's so much more powerful when a man does that than when a woman has to do it for herself, or when one woman does it for another woman. It's something about using that power and privilege that men have that really helps widen that line.
It makes me think of Rania Anderson. I'm sure you know Rania with her book talking about men and women. How do we help, champion other people? And that's what we're doing on the show. We're celebrating you. We're celebrating you for, first of all, having the courage to even put the word bitch in the title of your book. I personally,
people who didn't want me to.
Yeah, I bet you probably did. So first of all, I'm going to celebrate you having the courage to do that. I'm celebrating watching you navigate the community as you have shifted from more of a public sector to private sector. I think those probably the right words to use. And then how do you help people communicate? I think that's probably the crux of most relationships, is people don't know how to communicate, and then maybe don't know how to listen.
Oh, amen. Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. One of the first things I talk about in the book when we talk about communication is active listening. We do so much more, and I think social media kind of plays a part into this. We do so much more talking at each other than we do listening to each other. And so, yeah, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head there when it comes to listening.
One of your roles was chief of staff, and that would require a lot of listening and engaging different personalities, not multiple personalities in one person, but multiple personalities across the board. So what were some of your tricks? And so let's say we have community leaders listening, or we have a mom listening. I believe we're all this chief energy officer of our own lives, of our own families, of our own well-being. So what would be some guidance you would give somebody right now if they're struggling in a relationship, communicating, whether it's with their child, with their boss, with their friend about politics? What would be some of the advice you would say, okay, here's some things to consider?
Yeah, I would pass along the advice that my sweet grandma, who is still in North Carolina, told me. She said, Joni, you don't have to marry somebody to work with them. And I think that's really important. I don't care if you're talking about your family life or if you're working for a Fortune 500 company. Sometimes we want to get caught up in emotions and relationships. And it's almost like I from time to time, I've seen folks not want to work with someone if they didn't want to go out to happy hour with them. That's not necessarily helpful. So I think reminding yourself that you have to focus on whatever goal or result you're driving for and figure out how to use that interpersonal relationship in a way that accomplishes what you're going after, and kind of put aside those emotional feelings and constructs that sometimes holds us back.
Well, dive into that a little bit more, because I hear you, and I'm thinking about how hard that may be. It seems kind of easy to kind of separate yourself and put this emotion, like when people, it's very emotional right now in general. So how do people actually do that?
Well, I think it depends on the individuals involved and some of the dynamics that would be particular to whatever situation. But I'll give you an example. When we had to negotiate big development projects, when we were trying to build consensus on public policy issues, oftentimes I would have to deal with individuals or organizations that either I didn't necessarily align with, or maybe their leadership would nauseate me. Just being in the room with them, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to deal with this person, those multiple personality people. But I had to remind myself that it doesn't matter if I like the leader of XYZ organization, if I want to spend time with leader of ABC organization. The truth is, those two leaders are people that I need to build consensus to solve a problem. So I had to focus on solving that problem and less about the personalities involved.
When you think about your last 22 years, what are you most proud of? If you were gonna, be done with your life today, and not wishing that on anything, but what would you say? You know what? I'm so proud of the work we did here, because I don't think we take enough time to celebrate the good stuff we've done. And I don't mean get egotistical or bragging, but sometimes it's just stop, take a deep breath, and say, you know what? We did good. So weren't you a great party? So what are you celebrating that you have done well the last 22 years?
I think the last 8 years in particular, I'm so proud of the work that we did for women and children in this community. Our Women's Empowerment Initiative is still growing strong in many ways. We're working with the Women's Foundation now to expand the appointments project across the country. Just kicked that off in Fort Worth at the beginning of August. And so that was a program born right here in Kansas City, Missouri, that now other cities are wanting to implement. So I'm really proud of that. And then also a lot of the education work that we did in the mayor's office. The education is not an issue that a lot of mayors in Kansas City prioritize. And so I feel really good about the work that we did to elevate how important things like early childhood education and third grade reading proficiency are.
Well, I've been part of that, kind of watching what you guys have done with the Women's Foundation. And I'm so glad you picked that. That's a great thing to celebrate. As you've been out sharing your book to different audiences, because I know you've been out and about, think about a time recently where you go, wow, that was really cool, and great experience, and kind of share some of the lessons you learned.
Sure. I just went to Fort Leavenworth last week, and it was so interesting. First of all, I've never been on an active Army base before, or any military base. So that was just a brand new experience for me. It was great. And I would say the audience was probably half men, half women. And we had a really honest conversation about gender bias, diversity. And it was really interesting to see that the men were engaged and as interested in the conversation as the men.
So when you think about those conversations, people are having those, a lot of people are having those around their dinner tables at night, or for sure maybe on a Zoom call with some of their employees or employers or just girlfriends. So talk a little bit about gender bias, and how can people start to how do people have an honest conversation?
Self-awareness is a really good start.
Mhm.
And that's something that, whether you're talking about gender bias or any other sort of issue that plagues our society, self-awareness is key to building any sort of resolution to it. And oftentimes, particularly in politics, we don't necessarily see people exhibit a lot of self-awareness. And it's hard to build consensus with other people and kind of tell them what their shortcomings are and how they need to move on an issue when you're not doing the hard work of exploring your own self-awareness.
You know, there's a saying that my friend Wendy told me about, that her mentor gave hers: when you're aware, you're halfway there.
Yeah, that's true.
When you're aware, you're halfway there. So how can we develop more awareness? So it's interesting. So I'm a wellness nerd, and you're wondering why I might have a conversation with you about the thin line between cupcake and bitch. And part of it is because I believe that in order for people to be more authentic, they do have to be more aware, not just mechanically, chemically, energetically, but psycho-spiritually. And sometimes we're in toxic environments and we're not allowed to be ourselves, or we don't feel like we can be ourselves. We're not able to take that risk. So I'm so blessed that you have kind of guiding the way, and you're guiding that way with some women's leadership and empowerment issues, and doing a LinkedIn series. Can you share a little bit about how, what you're doing? I get an idea why you're doing it, and then how you're doing it.
Yeah, so I wrote this series on LinkedIn about how women can be natural advocates for resolving conflict, navigating conflict, that sort of thing. And this is built off my experience in the political realm, watching different leaders deal with conflict, whether it be in a huge organization or a little neighborhood association, what have you. And what I've seen is that women oftentimes exhibit empathy. They're good communicators, and they put their own self-interest kind of out of sight, out of mind. And that allows you to build consensus because you're not concerned with your own ego. And so those are kind of the tenets to why I've written this LinkedIn series, and try to get women thinking about how they can position themselves to navigate conflict within their own organizations.
And people can find out about that how?
That also can be found on our website, wickhamjames.com.
wickhamjames.com, or you can also go follow some of Joni's great wisdom she's sharing on LinkedIn. That's how I started following and learning more about what she's doing, kind of, like I said, stalking her a little bit. Let's talk about COVID. Let's get kind of aware and personal with you. And what has been some of your gifts of COVID?
I bet a lot of families can relate to this. I've really enjoyed, for the most part, spending all this quality time with my family, because I've seen my daughter in ways that I didn't see before. When you're with someone 24/7, you see them experience everything in a day. Whereas a year ago, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. She would have been at school half the day. I would have been at work or whatever. So I've been able to kind of see her experience the world now that we're all together here. And I've really seen how resilient kids can be. And if us adults can just figure this out, the kids truly will be okay. I was watching her do some of her virtual schoolwork today. And I mean, these kids, they just keep going. They're resilient little creatures.
Well, I think creating that rhythm helps. I'm thinking about listening, and I'm thinking about women navigating, and not just women, but men navigating today, tomorrow, yesterday. Has it changed how you're going to parent going forward?
Yeah, I think I will definitely keep in mind how resilient kids are. I mean, I always knew it, but now I'm seeing it firsthand almost every day, frankly. So I think that will change the way I parent. And I think also I've been able to see how intuitive these kids are. They, like, if I'm stressed out, even if I'm not articulating it with the words that come out of my mouth, she can tell that mom's like a little off or mom's stressed out. She can tell by my facial expressions. And I hadn't really given that much thought before all this.
And so how are you navigating, and how are you helping her talk to you about that, and That's a lot for a kid to come say, "Hey, mom, you're stressed out," or "What's going on?" How are you nurturing that in her? Because I feel like our kids come in and they're these beautiful beings, and they're loving and nurturing, and a lot of them are snuggling up. Think about I've got a almost 2-year-old nephew, and he can be a little snuggle bucket, but he can also be on the go a lot. So I'm thinking about, how do we nurture these humans, because they are what's going to take us to the next level in humanity.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's so important to create space and be present and accepting of all the questions that they might have, particularly in a crazy time like right now. It's so easy. We're all just too damn busy these days. It's so easy to almost be annoyed when you get 20 questions from a 7-year-old or whatever. But particularly these days when she's asking me questions, or when am I going to go back to school? Why can't I see my friends? I try to just sit down, take a minute, and just talk to her and just answer all of her questions right then, right there. Because I think that creates a comfort level and a trust level with her, and she'll keep coming to us with questions when we take the time to be present and talk through things with her.
So your biggest gift has been time with your family.
Yeah.
What about for you? I've got the family, but what about you? I found there's 3 camps. There's the camp who is kind of had the COVID-20. I'm going to call it COVID-20, not COVID-19, or COVID-19, where they kind of said, you know what, just F it. I'm going to eat what I want to eat. I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to watch what I want to watch on TV, and I'm not going to exercise. And then I have the group that says, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing. My life hasn't changed much. I was talking to my mother. Her life's not changed that much. Okay. She was already pretty homebound, not changed that much. And then I have the other group over here that says, you know what, I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm going to seize it. I'm going to focus on my well-being. I'm going to write that book I've been wanting to write. I'm going to, make those connections. So what camp have you been in?
Maybe somewhere in the middle. Historically, I've been really bad at taking care of myself. Mm-hmm. And some of it is this crazy political world that I've worked in my whole life, where everything is 24/7, because things like natural disasters, God forbid, violent crime, those things don't occur during a normal working hour typically. So I haven't necessarily had the luxury to focus on myself very much, and I haven't made it a priority for myself. So I'm still learning how to do that. I'm trying. But one thing that we've just started this week that I love and that I am committed to continuing doing is having family reading time. And it's good for my daughter because she loves to read, and she's going to continue loving to read when she sees her parents read with her. But also it allows me time to focus on whatever book that I'm reading on, and I don't have to be doing something. I can just sit with the book and my thoughts. That is not something that I have done probably in 15 years. So I'm excited about that. Seems like a small thing, but trust me, it's a big step for me.
Well, it's small changes that lead to big shifts. And I think what you're doing is you're creating that rhythm. And for everybody listening today, you know what, we are shifting. We're shifting seasons, and life has a rhythm about it. In summertime, a lot of times the light helps us kind of get regenerated. And I'm a little bit sad, and as well as concerned, that people have not got as much regenerative time this summer as we go into a little bit more of the darker season. I always say we're in a little bit of darkness right now because of, we've got pandemic on top of pandemic on top of pandemic. We got the mental health crisis we had before COVID, and we got COVID-19. Then we have Black Lives Matter and the violence, and then we have the political climate, and then we have the mental health pandemic, which is probably my biggest concern. And so I would encourage everybody to really look at your habits right now and think about, what small change can I make, whether it's reading, whether it's getting to sleep at a reasonable time. I know I've shifted just as of even yesterday. I'm like, okay, Michelle, why don't you get to bed about 15 minutes earlier and get up 15 minutes earlier? So I can continue to have this rhythm of working out. And I love my far infrared sauna from Sunlight. And so I'm like, okay, I can take time to get in that to help this season shift from going from a little bit more of a warm season to snap like that over, 36, 48 hours. So, let's talk a little bit about your current role. What are you working on right now with Wickham James Strategies and Solutions?
Yeah, so we work on strategic communications, government relations, public policy, a little bit of political consulting. Sly, my business partner, is a very accomplished mediator. And then we both do public speaking engagements in support of our books as well.
Mm-hmm. Good. What part do you enjoy the most?
Oh, man, that's a hard question. Part of the reason Sly and I wanted to go into consulting together is because we have gotten so used to our lifestyle in the mayor's office, where we deal with 12 different things before noon. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like I could ever go and sit in an office and do one thing all day long again. So that's one thing that I really love about our consulting firm, is that we've got lots of different irons in the fire. Thankfully, lots of different clients that have us working on some pretty fascinating issues and projects. So I don't know that I have one favorite thing. I just love the melting pot of things in general.
I'm with you. I love to, have my hands a little bit of everything. I've been reading a little bit about multitasking lately, and how people are thinking it's not great for you and different things. Sometimes I just like to, my day is pretty focused when I'm with clients. It's like, just client, which I love. But I also love the day where I'm like, okay, I can do work on this for a few minutes and this for a few minutes, and kind of just see where the energy moves me. So, I'm thinking about, for our people here wondering, gosh, what could I be doing to make this small change that will lead to a big shift? And I want to encourage you, if you have not had a good physical, a lot of people have stayed away from the doctor's office. I'm going to encourage you to get into your primary care doctor. I believe our bodies we're like this hub, and like I said, we're the CEO, and we're the hub, and we have these spokes off of it, whether it's your chiropractor or your strategist or your minister or your medical doctor, or your physical therapist. I'm going to encourage all of you, if you've not taken time over the last 6 to 9 months, and if you're due, get in for your yearly checkup right now, especially, and find out your vitamin D levels. There's been some new research out talking about vitamin D and how it helps with your immune system. And we're finding people that have adequate vitamin D tend to fight COVID better. And I want to tell you, one of my biggest concerns about COVID is the recovery and some of the long-term effects. So how do we put the odds in our favor? And, if you don't have a doctor, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you. I love my partnership with Advent Health. I've been across the highway from them for about 25 years now. And I had a client reach out to me today or over the weekend, and they had a son that needs something. I was able to just text one of my friends over there, Shannon, and say, hey, I'm needing this type of doctor. Can you help? And she said, Michelle, we got it. Give us a client's number. And they just took it from there. So I want to give a shout out to Advent Health, and thanks for making me look so good by helping take care of clients. So Joni, as we start to wrap up the show, I just have a few more questions for you. What's your medicine for the world? What is the special talent that you have that is your medicine for the world?
I would have to say it's laughter and a sense of humor. I have a hard time being serious about just about anything. And so I just try to find the humor in whatever situation is in front of us, and kind of use it as a disarming tool. So I would have to say humor / laughter.
And how can somebody work on that? What would be some tools that have you had to develop that, or was it just natural?
It's probably kind of natural to a fault. I was a little bit of a class clown from time to time when I got older, not so much when I was younger. But I think, how can you work on a sense of humor and laughter? I think it's important not to take yourself too seriously. You can take your job and your role seriously without taking yourself too seriously.
It's funny. I've been serious quite a bit throughout my life. And about 10 years ago, I added to my personal mission statement about humor, because it was like so serious. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Just don't, it's probably all going to be okay. I always say I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not doing heart transplants, even though I've got a friend that does heart transplants, or did do heart transplants. So it's like, okay, let me just kind of go, Norma Cousins, laughter is the best medicine. Thanks, Liz. Thanks for hanging out with us today and cheering us on. Okay, so here's probably a 2-part question. I have a feeling it's usually 1 part, but I have a feeling you're going to give me a part B. If you had a magic wand with everything going on in the world right now, what would you do?
I would try to create a pill that people could take to create more empathy in the world, because I think that is one of the biggest things missing in our society, and I think it can cure so many different things.
What does empathy mean to you? See, I told you there's going to be a second part to that.
Yeah, empathy means being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and think from their perspective about what they're going through and how it makes them feel.
That's a great explanation. And so it's a great conversation about listening, especially if people are on opposite sides of the fence. You know what? Tell me more. Help me understand your side, where you're coming from, and how could I maybe come with a little bit more vinegar versus oil, right?
Right.
A little bit more honey instead of. So when I like to close the show, I always like to think about quotes because words really matter. And I think you kind of shared that with empathy and how can we really make more meaningful connection with people. And it is to kind of see, got something going on in my. So how could we kind of shift what's happening? So share with me what quote we like to end this show with a quote. What quote did you bring to inspire our audience today?
We can learn so much from children, I think. And I was just watching Finding Nemo a few days ago, and that story is just precious. It really is, whether you have kids or not. And one of the characters in there repeats several times, just keep swimming, keep swimming. And my goodness, in today's world, isn't that good advice for all of us? It doesn't matter where you come from, how old you are, what you do for a living. In order to get through this crazy world that we're all navigating together, we just got to keep swimming.
Keep swimming. I love that one. Another one that we think about movies is Let It Go, Frozen. Some of my friends will say, just let it go, Frozen, because sometimes you just chew on something way too long. And the longer you chew on it, the more feisty you get. And the more feisty you get, you probably say things you don't really mean, and you turn off your listening ears and you start just thinking about what your response is going to be. So, hey, if you're out there struggling today, keep swimming. Let it go. Keep moving. Hey, I pulled a quote, and this is a special quote for Joni today. And a lot of times I will actually do some research and think about a quote. And I spent a little bit of time doing that. But my spirit said, you know what? Just pick a quote today. So this is for you, Joni. And thanks for joining me on Small Changes, Big Shifts today. And hey, good luck with what you're doing. Once again, you can find her book on their website, wickhamjames.com.
Yes.
Right, wickhamjames.com. I got that off the top of my head, or you can check it out at our local bookstore with Rainy Day Books. So here's your quote today, and it's called "You Matter." And I want you to know the work you're doing on the planet matters. How you're helping people, how you went into Fort Leavenworth last week and softened some hearts. You matter. You are enough. You have influence. You are a genius. You have a contribution to make to the world. For all those listening today, this is for you as well. You do have a contribution to make to this world. You have a gift to give that others need. So what's your medicine? I really encourage you to think about what brings you joy in your heart, and how could you spread that joy, especially right now. You are the change. Your actions define your impact. You matter. So go out and, spread the good. And once again, if you have not taken time to start, think about your fall strategy. We're done with playtime, summer. No, we're not done with playtime, but summertime is typically more play, less work. And the fall is kind of back to business. And how could you be more active, and how could you take care of yourself? I encourage you to check out the Small Changes, Big Shifts website, and it'll give you lots of ideas of how to plug in, whether it's drinking more water, getting to the doctor at my friends at Advent Health and getting your vitamin D checked, whether it's getting good sleep. We're working on your posture, just listening to your kids. So Joni, once again, thanks for sharing your heart today on Small Changes, Big Shifts.
Thank you.
All right, go out and have a great week. I'll chat with you all soon. I sure appreciate you listening to Small Changes, Big Shifts. If you go to the website, smallchangesbigshifts.com, we'll have the show notes ready for you there. If this episode inspired you to make a small change that will lead to a big shift, please share with a friend. You can catch our episode on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and our website. And if you feel like it, please leave a rating or a comment. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch our episode next week. Blessings to you.